on the next information, cases. What are cases? A case is an individual about whom or which, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an individual, it could be a thing, but it is the individual thing or object for which we are collecting the data. So here, case is the individual which we have data. A respondent is someone who answers a survey or a questionnaire. Those are people who answers the question or survey. Next, our subjects. Subjects respondents could be considered subjects, but subjects are anyone or anything that we experiment upon. So people we experiment. Next is participants. Participants are subjects, however, they are willing subjects. They volunteer for these things. So they are willing. Not all subjects, this sounds a little bit sinister, are not willing subjects. For example, if we were to experiment on plants or animals, they cannot give us consent, so we just call them experimental units. So those tend to be animals, plants. Finally, we have observations. Observations are just looking at the data, but they don't have to be clear about the who or have all the factors analyzed yet. So observations are just looking at the data. Next we have the sample. The sample is just cases select from a larger population. So cases selected from a larger population. Move this over a bit. Population. The population there is then the entirety of which you want to study. So it is the entire group. Next, now we go on to the important part, the variables. So this is important to remember. Remember, there are two different types of variables. There is categorical and quantitative variables. And the variables here are just characteristics. So the biggest difference between categorical and quantitative variable is actually the question why. Categorical data are just the names and the types, whereas the quantitative can be counted and they can have units, but not all of the units have to be units that are common. There are some units that we call ordinal variables. Those units, for example, if you were to go and count how many kids are in the classroom, there isn't necessarily a unit of kids, but we can say there are 13 kids. The kids will be an ordinal unit. We also have to be careful in talking about variables, because there are some variables that can fit into both categorical and quantitative. And in that case, the question of why makes them fit into either categorical or quantitative. For example, if we were to bring up age, right? Let's say you had 100 people, but you wanted to just group them into different age groups. So from babies, kids, teenagers, adults, elderly. If you were just going to group them into different age types, then they become types. That is a categorical variable. However, if you were to take their numbers and compare the amount of the numbers in ages compared to each other, then it becomes a quantitative variable. So once again, with the W's, Y is very important when we are working with stats. All right, let's look at now some tables, and let's answer our questions of the 5 W's. So first, let's look at this one. The first table, it shows us shipping method, number of purchases. So if we were to answer the first question of what here is our shipping method. Next, who is our purchases. Let's look at the second table. This table is actually if Amazon was recording, we know the why. If Amazon is recording the number of teenage customers visiting their sites each month to track customer growth and try to forecast sales. So now this changes our what, because they are trying to record teenagers. Our what is actually teenagers. Our who then becomes our month. This becomes our who, and our ordinal unit would actually be the number of teenagers. So this would be a number of teenagers. Would be our units. Also, we were to compare the first table to the second table. Notice the number of purchases. They just wanted to group them in, we know the why. They just wanted to group them in the types, ground, second day, and overnight. So the numbers in the first one is actually categorical. So the first one is actually categorical variables, whereas the second one, they want to compare the numbers so they can anticipate sales, and we have units of teenagers. So this is actually a quantitative. Let's see here. Quantitative variable. Finally, let's look at the very last table. Where is it? Here. This actually has to be about Lance Armstrong. Back in the day, before he got all of his medals stripped away from him because of doping. Don't do drugs. This is the information about Lance Armstrong. So let's look at the information and let's put them into category of quantitative or categorical. So first things first, let's look at the year. The year can be considered quantitative or categorical based on what we want to do on the interpretation. So once again, that has to be that is a why question. So let's put a Q or a C next to year. Here, Q or C. Winner. Winner, of course, you can just only put that in the category. There is only one winner. That's the category. Next one, country of origin. Country of origin doesn't have any units. It is a name, so it is a category. Total time. Time has units, so time is a quantitative. Average speed. Speed has units. It is quantitative. Stages. Stages is actually counted. So since it is counted, it is a quantitative. It is an amount. Next is total distance ridden. Total distance ridden has a unit, so it is a quantitative. Starting riders has an amount, riders being the unit, so that is a quantitative, and finishing riders being the unit, so that is also a quantitative. And that is all for today.